difference between contracted, which is knots, also known as adhesions, versus micronauts, trigger points, punto gatillos. All right, so I'd like to explain this to best of my knowledge. I usually like to, this is when your muscle, a contracted muscle. A contracted muscle is when your muscle is contracted for a long time. Adhesions form like glue. Like glue, it gets stuck together and it can't move. Usually muscles, they float along each other, or I like to do this, they float like this. But when they get stuck for a long time, it can't move, it can't expand. I like to use the example of the t-shirt thingy, and this is a knot or adhesion or contracted muscle where the shoulder is contracted. It's like the muscle is very short, locked and short. Okay? And sometimes I've seen some that are very strong and some that, for me, in my case, is very weak. But I've seen also, it's when you work out a lot, and then when you work out a lot, it also contracts, and it's harder to live out. So if you work out on your chest a lot, you will have and then you don't work out the back to balance it, you will have shoulder problems too. But that's different from our sedentary, which we don't work out, which sedentary. And and I usually like to say, after you contraction for the front, it elongates the back, and then it forms little, before it breaks, it forms little micro knots. Usually some people like to call them knots, muscle knots, but since they're like little, and then it's not the whole muscle. Difference between the front, the whole knot, is the whole muscle is in contraction. The micro knot is just the muscle that is the muscle has little dots. It's like it's a whole muscle and then little dots along the back, and it kind of it forms to protect itself before it breaks. So and this is, for me, micro knots or punto gatillos are formed because it's like a trauma. It's a self-healing trauma. Body trying to reinforce itself, and that's because it's too thin, and then there's it's like on a micro. It's not the whole muscle. It's more on a scale, and it has the size that you can actually feel it. If you run your hand through it, you can feel it. It's like the size of the head of a head of grain of rice. And my people have told me you can actually feel it. And then usually if it could form anywhere on your body. I don't know if it could form on a contracted muscle, but it could definitely form on an elongated muscle. Usually I like to explain this with a rubber band. Usually I like to, when you contract it for so long, adhesion, a knot forms. I usually like to tie a knot, right? Tie a knot. But I don't know, one of the team members, he's like, this is just as effective, you form this adhesion where the bigger this adhesion is, the longer this back part is, So this adhesion or this knot forms, and this becomes longer. And you see this rubber band on this side, even if you go back to it, it's already kind of loosened. It's kind of lost its thing. And when you stretch out this side for so long, little dots form, or micro knots form to help it reinforce itself. And it's the same. So the difference between a knot and a micro knot for me is the knot is the whole muscle is glued and contracted. The whole muscle is adhered to. Adhesion. It's glued together. And micro knot, it's when there is trauma to a muscle on little spots of it. There's like little dots of it, and it's the size of a head. So that's the difference between a knot and a micro knot.